Hello and welcome back to George Past the Post. This video is going to look in depth at the election results over the last 20 years in the Australian House of Representatives seat of Melbourne. Why, I hear you cry? Well, because I think it tells us many things about the importance of electoral systems. So, just a reminder to those that incredibly have not watched my other videos. In Australia, for the House of Representatives elections, voters number every candidate in order of preference in a system called full preferential voting. To win, a candidate needs to get at least 50% plus one of all the votes. So the first preferences are counted, and if nobody has 50%, the lowest placed candidates are eliminated and their votes are reallocated to the remaining candidates. This process continues until somebody has 50% plus one. And in Australia, for information purposes, even if somebody has 50% plus one, say on the first count, they continue the process of eliminating the candidates and until you basically have two candidates left, what's called the two candidate preferred vote. So in Melbourne, until 2007, every previous election, the final two candidates had been the Australian Labor Party and the Liberal Party. So, for UK viewers, when I say the Liberal Party, I'm not actually talking about the Liberal Democrats or even the party that is in the UK that is called the Liberal Party. I'm talking about the equivalent of the Conservative Party. There's a whole other video that I could do about the Liberal Party and why it's called the Liberal Party, but that's for another time. So in 2004, in Melbourne, the final two candidates were the Australian Labor Party and the Liberal Party, and it was a very decisive win for Labor, 71% to 29%. That's because most of the votes from the Green Party, who got 18% in 2004 roughly, most of their preferences went to Labour, which allowed Labour to win by a large margin. But in 2007, everything changed. The Greens still came third on the first count, but they came close enough to the Liberals that once the votes of the other candidates had been redistributed, the Greens actually overtook the Liberals, meaning that the final two candidates were the Labour Party and the Greens. And the result of that was a much closer vote. It was about 55-45 to Labour. So Labour still won, but when the contest was Labour versus Liberal, it was a much clearer win for Labour. But let's fast forward to 2010, or not really fast forward because we're going chronologically anyway, to 2010. In 2010, the incumbent Labour MP retired, which was one of the contributing factors to the result. But Labour still polled the most first preference votes. This time the Greens clearly did finish second, much further ahead of the Liberals. So again, the final two candidates were the Labour Party and the Greens, and this time the Greens managed to win about 56 to 44%. And at the time, most Liberal preferences went to the Greens instead of Labour. Now in Australia, parties and candidates, they hand out what are called how to vote cards. This is to make sure that mainly that their supporters obviously vote for them as number one, but to make sure that they number all the candidates in order of preference to make sure that your vote will count. And at the time, in 2010, the Liberal how to vote card recommended putting the Greens ahead of Labour. Now it's important to note that voters are free to completely ignore the how to vote cards, but many voters do follow them, but not all. So in 2010, we had the election of Adam Bant, the Green candidate, and he would go on to become the Green Party leader. And note, he finished second on first preferences, but managed to defeat Labour in the final count. In 2013, Adam Bant, this time he came first on first preferences, something he would continue to do until this day. And again, the final two candidates were the Greens and Labour. This time, the Liberals had recommended that people preference Labour ahead of the Greens, but in this election in 2013, it didn't make much difference. But there was a small swing to Labour, so it was 55-45, not 56-44. That may have been a small impact of the change in recommendation, but that's important when we come up to the present day. Now in 2016 and 2019, Labour finished third on first preferences, and so this meant that this time in those two elections the final two candidates were the Greens and the Liberals, and very much like in 2004 when it was the ALP versus Liberals, the Greens won very easily, 68% to 32% against the Liberals in 2016, and then 2019, I believe it was then 72 to 28 or something like that. But so in those two elections, it was the ALP preferences that helped re-elect Adam Bant. So what next? Where are we? We are now, let's go to 2022, which was the election before the one that was held on Saturday. This time, the Labour Party recovered a bit and they finished second. So we're back to a Green versus ALP contest. Again, the Liberal How to Vote card recommended putting the Labour Party ahead of the Greens, but that didn't stop Adam Bant from being re-elected, this time 60-40, which is still a smaller margin than when it was the Greens versus the Liberals. But now we fast forward to 2025. Now the boundaries of the seat did change. However, the result was, again, Adam Bant still, for the Greens, got the most first preference votes. And again, it was the final two candidates were the ALP and the Greens. And again, this time it's crucial. The Liberals did recommend putting the Greens last, so putting Labour ahead of the Greens. And this time, the result was much closer on first preferences, and it has been projected, and Adam Bant has conceded defeat, that the Labour Party will win the seat of Melbourne back with, I think it's about 55%. I may have got that wrong, apologies. Or maybe 53, or maybe 56. I'm just going to keep making up the numbers here. But Labour will win from second place, based on largely the Liberal preferences. A reversal of what happened in 2010 when it was the other way around. It was the Greens who managed to come from second to win because of Liberal preferences. So what does all of this tell us? Well, it tells us that obviously the electoral system here was key. If first past the post had been used, in 2025, Adam Bant would have been re-elected because he got the most votes on the first count. But perhaps he would never have been elected in the first place because in 2010 he came second. The use of full preferential voting is also important because every vote in the count continues. So under other versions of preferential voting, you don't have to number all the candidates. So a lot of this is to Liberals. In order for Liberal voters to have their votes count, they would have to pick between Labour and the Greens. And there are some parts of Australia, some elections in Australia where it's called optional preferential voting. If you didn't have to do that, if you didn't have to number the candidates, all of them, if you just had to put a 1 if you wanted and just leave it blank, perhaps a lot of Liberals wouldn't have given any preference to the Greens or Labour. And so perhaps in 2010, it would have been easier for Labour to hold on because they wouldn't have been able to rely on all of, a lot of the Liberal preferences. And similarly, 2025, the Greens may have won because, again, they may not have been enough Liberal preferences to get Labour over the line, although it's still not impossible. So I think, it really does show the importance of preferential voting, the importance of recommendations that parties potentially make, and I think it's a very interesting history there of how you can be elected and raised up by a voting system, and then that same voting system then many years later comes to work against you. So I hope I've demonstrated, I hope you've learnt something interesting, and if not, it's nearly 11 minutes of your life that you will never get back if you have made it this far. I thought, why not just go for it, go to town and explore all of the fascinating things that there are to know about the Melbourne electorate. So thank you for watching. Voting systems matter, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.